to our panelists. Thank you so much for joining our panel today. This is being put on by our Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So much work has gone into putting this together and coordinating events. So we're so grateful for people who've put in the time and the effort to bring this about today. I'm Nicole Panetta. I am an account strategist here at TA, and I'll be moderating our panel discussion today. As a reminder, our meeting is being recorded. As you're joining our meeting today, you'll be put on mute except for our panelists who will be able to speak. Another housekeeping note before we jump in, you can add your time for joining this panel today to job 2791. That's job 2791. With that, this month our panel is celebrating Juneteenth. This is observed on June 19th, which will be this coming Saturday. And we hope the panel today increases your understanding of Juneteenth, African American culture, as well as progress toward true equality that still needs to be made. Today, our panel brings together 2 Black TA employees, as well as community members from the organization, The Black Neighborhood. Each person brings their own unique background and experiences and perspectives, and we're so grateful that they've taken the time out of their schedules to share with us some of their thoughts today. Before we hear from them, I will briefly introduce them by name. So today we have Ariana Webb Fitzpatrick, a TA employee, Anna Robbins, a TA employee, Bryce Savoy, a member of the Black Neighborhood, as well as Kamani Elliott, who is also part of the organization, the Black Neighborhood. Thank you so much for being with us today. I am going to turn a few minutes over to Kule, who will provide us with a little bit of background around Juneteenth. She is our TA Diversity and Inclusion Committee Chair. So I'm going to turn the time over to Kule Hanamakai to give us a brief description.
Thank you, Nicole, and thanks again to all of our panelists and everyone who's joining. We really appreciate this opportunity to share more information. Just wanting to set this up, I know for myself and maybe for some others, we may not be familiar with Juneteenth, so just wanted to share a little bit again of a background here. So Juneteenth is not a holiday that's represented in our textbooks, but it is an important date related to slavery. You may be able to understand Juneteenth if you remember the Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed by President Abraham Lincoln 2.5 years before Juneteenth. At this time, Abraham Lincoln issued the proclamation which notified the states that they were in a rebellion against the Union, that slaves would be declared free if they continued to rebel. However, there were some people that were unaffected by the emancipation. For those people in the Emancipation Proclamation did not bring about, emancipation or freedom from slavery. They heard of the rumors, but it wasn't official until Texas issued a General Order number 3 on June 19th, 1865. On that date, General Granger visited Galveston, Texas to inform the people there of the end of the Civil War and final freedom of an estimated 250,000 slaves. This day commemorates the emancipation of African Americans. It became known as Juneteenth. News regarding the emancipation had been suppressed by the slave owners who were waiting for the war to end. The freed slaves of Texas were able to leave their former slave dwellings in search of family, with hope in their hearts and clothes on their backs. This freedom allowed African Americans to travel freely, name oneself, and legalize their marriages. They could now worship freely and create community organizations. Many of the organizations originated from the church. African Americans sought to become educated and pursue whatever rights had been denied to them during the time of slavery. African Americans were even able to obtain land through grants. Although there was little monetary support and entering freedom may have been under the worst conditions, freedom was the beginning of the Reconstruction and opportunities. Juneteenth became an official federal holiday just last year in 2021, and just as recently as March in 2022. So with that overview, I'd like to turn it back over to Nicole.
Thank you so much, Kool-Aid. I think I previously misstated the day that Juneteenth is this year. It will be on Sunday this weekend, not Saturday. Thank you so much, Kool-Aid, for providing us with that overview of Juneteenth. It's definitely something that I've only become recently aware of in the last couple of years, and so I'm really excited to hear more about what our panelists have to say today. Jumping in, generally just hearing this high-level recounting of how Juneteenth came about, what stands out to you? Ariana, can we go ahead and have you provide a response to this question?
Yeah. So honestly, it's kind of what like everyone else has been saying, that until recently, I didn't really know much about it. Like, and I feel like a lot of Black events, like they're in the news, but like you don't hear much about Juneteenth. It hasn't until like recently become like very like popular, and like people have started talking about it more. Because I remember one of my friends from high school, I mean, she's known about it, but it was like my senior year and she was talking about it. I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you don't know what it is? I was like, I feel like I should, but I don't. And so like I just started learning about it more, and like so I felt like I should have known about it, but I also am not the only one who never didn't really know as much history, because like you guys have said, it's not really in the history book. So like I felt like I'm worried about the studies. I'm not gonna go like, oh, let me just go do some like deep research on like whatever, because it's not like it wasn't in the book. So I had no reason to even like, I didn't even have a reason to look it up because I didn't even know it was a thing to begin with.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your perspective on that. Bryce, what about you? What is this high-level recounting about Juneteenth stand out? What stands out to you from that recounting?
Yes, so similar to Ari, I feel like I've, within the last couple of years, I found out about, Juneteenth and the historical context behind it. And just hearing the recounting, and that's something that I've been, thinking about for a couple of days about, this question and what it means. It like one of the things that kept sticking out in the recounting is freedom, free, the word free and all these different things. And to be honest with you, I don't feel that. I know that was 2,000 years ago, but present day, I still don't feel free. And as a Black man, we'll get into that. I think that I'm working towards that, but I know a lot of my people in the communities don't feel that as well. So while it may be, an important event in history for some people, for myself, I don't really feel anything. If anything, I feel like just disappointed. Because it shows like that was 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years later, I feel like it's the same thing. I don't really get any type of excitement or I don't really feel any type of way about it. I guess like celebrating the day, it's a celebration to like celebrate my community, people that I know that I've grown up with, or just people from all across the diaspora. But I don't really feel vindicated or accepted, and definitely don't feel free. So it's just another reminder that we have so far, so much further to go. That's what, if anything, it reminds me.
Sorry, it looked like I put myself back on mute. Thank you so much, Bryce. I definitely appreciate your thoughts around freedom, and definitely agree that there is opportunity to create more of that within our world today.
I have something really quick to add to kind of what he just said about freedom and Juneteenth. It's obviously nice to celebrate like, something Black and like celebrate our freedom, but also given that like even just it being celebrated, like even the day-to-day basis, you don't really get the sense of freedom. Because even when I'm driving, I mean, I'm younger, so I'm a little more carefree, but I definitely think just like literally anything, especially on Juneteenth, because it's definitely been more popularized. I feel like people have like they have more of a sense to like scrutinize it. So like, especially on that specific day, it feels like I mean, don't get me wrong, I love to celebrate and like love to celebrate Black people, but just definitely on freedom, it almost kind of feels like it's gotten worse because it's been more popularized. So now it's like everything is like under high scrutiny, and it's supposed to celebrate freedom, but I feel like we just went backwards. But yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Nicole, can you answer that?
Please
Sorry,
jump
sorry to go off script, but to piggyback on what Ari and Bryce were saying, I feel like it is widely accepted, sort of, in America. However, I believe that we kind of gotten away from the history or like the purpose of why we're celebrating. So I'm in New York and I see like there's a big Juneteenth festival at the park. Everybody's going, but everybody's purpose is to drink alcohol and to have fun, listen to music. And not once do we really share history or talk about why we're here. So I think it's kind of been like a lost cause, but it's new, so it's a little convoluted, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Yeah, maybe some of the purpose can be brought back to the forefront. Thank you so much for your responses. Jumping to our next question. Why is Juneteenth important for Americans to know about? And what are the meaningful ways that TYers can observe Juneteenth? Anna, can we invite you to answer this question first?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to answer. Just thinking about the answers that we've heard previously, Juneteenth was a turning point in history. So in America, we get so excited about the 4th of July, but honestly, Juneteenth should be widely accepted as much as the 4th of July because it literally was a turning point in freedom. And if you think about it, we signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776. And it was, so what is it, 87 years later, and then they finally did the emancipation, and then we finally were having our slaves be set free. And then it wasn't until 2.5 years later that we now have Juneteenth, and Juneteenth was the actual celebration of all the freedom of the slaves. So we don't talk about that. It's not in our history books. They don't bring it up in schools, and we're just barely celebrating it. And as my co-peers have said, we're celebrating it for all the wrong reasons. We don't even know why we're celebrating it, but literally it was a turning point in history. It was a turning point where freedoms were actually felt. And that's why we celebrate it. We celebrate it so we can be reminded that for Black Americans and people of Black history, we have had delayed freedoms, and we continue to have delayed freedoms and delayed opportunities. And that's why we celebrate Juneteenth, is to be reminded that. And it's so important that we keep that in mind. Things are delayed and it's a reality. And so celebrating Juneteenth is not asking all the people who aren't Black to recognize and fix all of our problems. That's not why we celebrate Juneteenth. We are capable human beings and we can fix problems ourselves. What we're here for is for the education. We're here to celebrate the education of our history and to acknowledge that there were faults in the past. And we acknowledge that there are faults in the past for our country, but also for ourselves. We may have our own tendencies to be judgmental, to avoid conversations because we're uncomfortable. And that is a big part of why we celebrate Juneteenth, so that we can have these conversations, acknowledge past faults, and grow from it and build a better unified nation. That's what Juneteenth is all about.
Thank you so much. I think that's interesting, the term delayed freedom. And I think that, in bringing about this conversation today and other conversations in the future, it helps bring that purpose, kind of like you mentioned previously, to the forefront a little more, and hopefully making that freedom a little less delayed. Thank you, Anna. Kamani, do you have any thoughts around this question as well?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So I think that Juneteenth has widely been perceived as a part of Black culture as opposed to American culture, which is why it's not taught in schools and it's unknown to many Americans. But I feel like once we actually start to acknowledge it as a society and celebrate it, we're able to do sort of a microscopic look in our past and see the traumatic experiences slavery has brought upon us and create a better future for everyone that's more inclusive, more safe, etc.
Thank you so much. I definitely agree. All right. This is a question that we'd love for all of our panelists to respond to. What does it mean to be a Black man or a Black woman in America? Ariana, sorry, as you're taking a drink, would you be willing to start us off?
Yeah, so for me, being in college and going to HBCU and being in DC, I think it means many different things, especially coming to Utah. It's all very, very, very different and very coming from where, like, so I went to a private school that was basically all white. And so I definitely got wrapped into that little bubble. And it's very easy when it's like your day to day life. But I always, especially with my friends, I always have to think about like where I'm going, like quite literally anything, honestly, especially driving in the rich neighborhoods. You can't mess up, like you don't have an opportunity to mess up, or else like it's like catastrophic because anything and everything can be used against you. But just even like I don't have necessarily, like I have to present myself in a different way. I have to dress sometimes in certain ways just to even present myself as not like just being a Black person, that I'm just like a person. And especially coming to Utah from, coming to Utah from DC, it's definitely an adjustment. I just, because I got so used to like being around Black people all the time, I never had to think about that. And so I definitely got really spoiled. But coming out here, it's like, it's opened my, I kind of remember like what reality is. Because even just like driving, I just have people staring. When I'm walking, I have people like breaking their necks like they've never seen a Black person. I'm like, yeah, we exist. Like, it's nothing new. But you just really have to be aware of it. Like, you don't really get away with anything. You have to be on your P's and Q's basically 24/7.
Yeah, the awareness, that you're talking about is really, really interesting. Bryce, do you have any thoughts to add to this question?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I feel so many things. One of the main things, like Ari said, is just there's always a level of you have to be on your P's and Q's. There's a small margin of error for us. So I think about that. I think of also just having the strength. Like we carry the weight of our ancestors. We carry the weight of our communities. We carry the weight of Black people across the world in whatever we do. So I think about that and I feel that. And I think the main thing, like I kind of touched on earlier, is just the whole, for me, is just the obsession of what freedom could look like for our people. I know what it doesn't look like, and that's what America in its history has shown us, but I don't know what that looks like for us. And so going on that journey every day, and just getting closer towards that and having some hope that I may not see that vision that I have in my lifetime, but hopefully my kids, and generations to come can see that. So I think for just me as a Black man, at the end of the day, is really just trying to be human. I just want to be human. I just want to exist and be the best version of myself. I have a lot of different experiences, good and bad, and so I think taking that into consideration to everything that I do is very, very important. And I think that we just need to be humanized. Like we're humans. We have the same thoughts. We have the same just overall talents as the world, and we're not monolithic. Like there's you may see me in one space, and I can be in another space that you probably wouldn't even think that I would be in. That's just the reality of the matter. And so I think just the world needs to realize that. And I think in realizing that, people will see that we're more alike than we are different. And so that's just how I perceive it and what I think about every day. And it is tough. It is tough. Every day is just choosing what you wanna look into. There's negativity that's surrounded by us, and the whole everybody on this panel I know knows that part of it. But it's also choosing to be positive every day. in the midst of the struggles, internally, externally, even in our community. There's so many different issues that you have to think about, that we're forced to think about. We've been thinking about this since we've been born. And so because of that, our perspective is different. We are passionate. We may come off a certain way when we talk about these issues, but that's because we literally have to think about them every single day. We don't have any choice to like turn it off. There's no, that's impossible for us. I would just encourage anybody that's on this panelist who may not, be Black and may not have those experiences, just to think about it and understand that's just where we come from. That's just the environment. That's the reality of the matter. But that doesn't downplay what we're here to do and the level of hope and perseverance and determination that we have to, at some point play a role in the world that we want to see. That's it.
Thank you so much. As you're talking, it just makes me think how detrimental stereotypes can be, because it does put that barrier up and it does highlight those differences more, and blocks that perspective of, thinking and understanding that there are similarities, looking for those likenesses, and finding greater unity by putting away stereotypes. Thank you. Anna, what does it mean to you to be a Black woman in America?
So I've been thinking about this question a lot, and I have a lot of different thoughts on this. I think this is a really difficult question because it really is so different for every single person, because all of us have a different background, a different history. We have people on this panel, that they were raised around Black people and that's what they know, but I'm adopted into a Caucasian family. And I have my sister, she's Black. Most of my family is Caucasian and Spanish and Asian, because my family does adoption, and there's 10 kids and we have every single race. So all my cousins are all Navajo Indian, because they were all adopted from the Navajo Indian reservation, because I live in Arizona, New Mexico. And so I've had so many different experiences with this, where growing up, I was called whitewashed by people of color because I didn't talk the same, or because I dated white people, but I was living in Utah where there's not that many options of dating. So, what can you do, and I've also had the experience where when I got pregnant with my son, it was a really bad experience. And I went to report it, and they told me that people who were like me, Black girls, often got pregnant before marriage. And so there was nothing that they could do. That it was just something in my stereotype that we often were promiscuous. And so they couldn't help me. And I've had situations where I went and got a job and they hired me because they needed diversity they didn't look at my skills or anything, and they didn't care, but they wanted to up their diversity. And I was a police officer during George Floyd. And so I had all different kinds of things during that moment. So yes, I was a police officer right before I came to TA. And let me tell you how that was, being a police officer and having to wear the blue and be on the line of blue, and all of that was happening. And also the real struggle of going and working through different interviews, and everybody all of a sudden wanting me on their team, again, for that diversity fact, and to kind of show that they're a Black ally, when a Black ally is much more than just having a couple of people on your team who are Black, right? And I've seen all different kinds. I was taken to jail when I was pregnant. An officer pulled me over, and he said it was because I had a monkey hanging in my window, which I had a little dashed monkey hanging in the top window, and it was for obstruction of vision for my window. And then he handcuffed me right then and there. And I said, what is happening? Like, I have no idea. And he's just like, you're going to jail. There's a warrant. I didn't have a warrant. I did sit in jail overnight because I had to wait. I had to go through the whole experience, and I had to go to court and take all this stuff because of all this. So I've seen all different kinds. I walked home from college and had people, I was in a professional outfit, like it did not look scary, but had people who are Caucasian walking a little bit in front of me, looking back and whispering and then speeding up their walk. And so I know all different types of being Black in America. And now I have a Black son who I have to worry about having those conversations with when he gets older about, hey, you can still do things, and don't let anybody tell you you can't do things. Or, you know what, he's not scary when he walks in and he has a beanie on because he chooses to wear a beanie or a mask on over his face because he's trying to be safe and healthy. He's not going to rob your store, just because he's Black. And I have to worry about having those conversations. And those are conversations that no mother should have to worry about having with their children. And that is what it's like to be a woman in America who is Black and to face all those things. Like the majority of women in leadership are not women of color. And we should be up there. And I'm, again, not asking for America to fix my problems. I'm asking for America to educate themselves and to come together and to help create that unified America that we all talk about, that unified America that we all claim is a land of freedom. Everyone should be feeling it then. And as you've heard your panelists say, we are not feeling it. And that's where we come in. And that's where we have the opportunity to really create change wherever you are. It doesn't matter if there's only 5 people of color in Utah. Make yourself available to those people, but also become educated. Just become educated and have those difficult conversations. I think we all are always turning our head, looking down, or pointing at other people and saying, this conversation isn't for me, it's for them, because I don't have any issues. But we all have issues. Deep down rooted, we all have issues. And a lot of it is just because of lack of education and lack of conversation.
Yes, we all live here in this country. We all live in this community together. And definitely coming together to have those conversations and to educate ourselves. I think that is so important. Thank you so much for making that point and for sharing some of your own personal experiences. Kimani, what are your thoughts?
Yes, thanks for the other 3 for sharing. For me, it's very convoluted. It's operating in a space where I have a sense of double consciousness, like this sense of two-ness, 2 separate contradicting identities, being American, but then being Black. So on being American, yes, part of me wants to be patriotic. I want to love the soil I was born to. I want to love America. I want to be socially accepted and have access to everything, right? But then on the other hand, I'm Black, which is a victim to Americanism, has been a victim to Americanism from our history. So just kind of navigating in those spaces and always sort of operating through the lens of white people, even if you try to separate yourself. For example, I could get put over by the police officer, and I'm thinking, how does this police officer view me? Does he view me as a threat? So how can I change my disposition? How can I change my attire to make sure that he sees me as a safe person? So yeah, it's just operating in that type of space, being proud, but also trying not to be afraid and being prideful of the culture, of Black culture, but feeling not accepted completely in all aspects and all social aspects. So it's just kind of dealing with that duality and finding the safety, I guess the sweet point in being American and being Black.
The duality that you talk about sounds like it would be incredibly exhausting. Like having to try to be or change yourself in an instance, such as, I think you had mentioned, like, if someone gets pulled over, like how do you change, or how do you react in that situation to make sure that you're being perceived in a certain way by that officer? I think that would be incredibly exhausting.
I have another quick add-in once again. It's kind of what Anna said in Kumani. It's kind of like, so for one, being a Black female, it's like you'd never know which way is the right way to go, because if you're like, you don't take any bullshit, then you're loud, you're aggressive. But then if you don't, then you're a pushover. And it's just like, it's double net, like you can't win whatever you do. So, I mean, at this point, you just really gotta be yourself. But also having brothers and sisters, so like for me personally, I think I've definitely had an easier life just being sometimes in white neighborhoods, but also my mom is lighter. So people are nicer to her. So they're nicer to me, and they don't think it's not the same thing by any means when I'm with my dad. and when I watch my mom. It's two completely different things. And personally, I think being a black man is way harder because like and when you're a girl, when you're pretty, you can get away with things. Like there's definitely things that it's a little bit easier and like if you cry, okay. But being a black guy, no matter where you are, how good, like anything, I like especially being pulled over. Like I got pulled over here with my friends. All I could think about was like, am I going to jail? Like we didn't even do anything. We just pulled over to like look at the GPS because we're not from here. And the police officer, he asked us, he's like, have y'all been drinking? What are y'all on? We're like, nothing. He's like, are you sure? What are you on? I was like, lights? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. But all I could think about was like, and there's of course another police officer shining his flashlight in my window. All I could think about was like, do I need to call my mom? Like, am I going to talk to my mom? Like, what's going to happen in like 5 minutes? Because we didn't do anything, but it's as simple as like a traffic stop that can like ruin your entire life or alter your entire life forever. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I wanted to
Thank
ask
you.
something real quick, because
Yes,
so
please.
one of the things that you said, he was like, hearing our experiences is like, seemed like that could be very exhausting. It is. It is very exhausting. And so I think what makes it, I think, manageable is the fact that we, continue to know, or the hope, obviously the hope, and really for myself, I'm, very, very spiritually grounded. So I have that foundation that was passed down to me through my grandmother, through my mother and my family. And so I've, able to navigate, life and have certain experiences where what's been taught, what's been pushed, what's been promoted about, what this world is and what it could, or what it is not. I've seen the other side of it. I've been traveling across the world and saw that when I'm in other countries, I don't feel that same tension. I don't feel that same pressure. I don't feel that same anxiety, if you will, being out there. And so I know that it's possible. So knowing that it's possible, it's coming to America and being in certain spaces and holding space, right? Because it's like I've decided, I don't know at what point, but it was like I'm gonna unapologetically be myself rather than try to be somebody else and feel some type of way like by myself. Nobody else would know. When I go home at night, I have to make sure that I can sleep peacefully, knowing that whatever space that I'm in, I've out myself, and whatever I don't get or do get because of that, I'm okay with that. So I think that is very, very important for myself and for a lot of us. But another thing that I wanted to share real quick is a story of Utah. So last year, for my 29th birthday, I went to Bryce Canyon. Obviously, my name is Bryce, so I had to go check it out. It was something that I had the meaning to have on the bucket list. So I drove about 8 hours from LA to Bryce Canyon, and then drove up to Salt Lake City on my birthday. And so, in preparing to go to Utah, I'm doing a lot of research. I'm researching. I think I probably Googled Black people in Utah and tried to see what popped up. I'm like, I'm talking to my parents and family. And they're like, all right, be careful now. Like it's not a lot of us out there. And I'm reading statistics. I'm reading testimonies from people like basketball players that play for the Jazz, just whatever I could find to try to see what the experience was like. And so, in going to Salt Lake City, in the week, I think I was out there for about 2 days. I had a great experience. Like I saw a lot of Black people, seem like they come from like the same type of backgrounds and environments that I come from and whatnot. And so I did have a positive experience, I will say. And so I'm telling that story to say that it's not always like what people say it's like in certain places. Like sometimes you have to go for yourself. Sometimes you have to have these experiences for yourself in order to be like, okay, it's not like that. Because my impression was that I wasn't going to see no Black people. And to be honest with you, that's something I'm fine with, because I've grown up in the Bay Area, where it's a melting pot. I've been the only Black person in the white space before, and I'm comfortable in who I am, and I articulate myself, all the different things. So I don't really think about it in that way. But to be out there to have that experience and have a great experience, positive experience, I have no issues, no looks, no stares. Everything was just a good atmosphere that changed my perspective on some things, and something that myself and Kimani talk about a lot, and us as an organization, is about energy. We're big on energy. We're big on going to spaces and having positive energy and getting that positive energy reciprocated. So I think stuff like that is even important. We don't talk about that enough, how important just having a certain energy, having a certain presence, and just being yourself. As cliche as that sounds, goes a long way. So I just wanted to share that.
Can I add something to that really quickly?
Yes, please.
Bryce, so I have a question for you, brother Bryce. So I've known you for a long time, and I know that our parents preempted us since we were little kids to go into this world, that we were Black men, that the odds were against us. We hear that in the songs, we hear that in the movies, in the culture, etc. So you were saying that it's still exhausting. Do you feel like it's gotten easier for you to navigate in America as a Black man? That you're 30 years old, you've been doing this for so long, or do you feel like it's still taxing on your mental?
That's a great question, man. I think it's easier, and I will say it's easier for me because I have certain tools, therapy. Like I said, the spiritual background and being able to study the word and having a support system of people that I can count on and talk to about a plethora of issues is very, very vital to my success, and it helps me a lot for my mental space, physical activity, all these different things. But it's like that's good for myself, but it's not really about me. It's about people who don't have those tools, who don't have those access, who don't have those resources for whatever reason, or don't feel comfortable accessing those resources and tools. Those are the people that I always keep in mind, and thinking about that and hearing their stories and being around these people that I love, who I care about, who I grew up with, who are family, hearing their experiences, I think it actually what motivates and inspires me to continue to do the work that I'm doing, because I know that while I may be okay, while me, Kamani and I may be okay, or whoever else, it ain't really about us. It's about the people that's at the bottom of the totem pole, and that's tends to be quite frankly always Black people. So I think about that a lot. But yeah, it is definitely easier for me to navigate into existing, to be myself, because of the work, and also because of the perspectives and the experience that I've had in life, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of the responses that we've gotten. Very personal, very vulnerable. So I appreciate each of you sharing those with us today. Bryce and Kamani. Bryce, you had mentioned some of the work that you're doing. I'm assuming that part of that is maybe being with the Black neighborhood. I'm wondering if you can share a little bit, very briefly, about what you're doing in that organization and what your hopes are for that organization.
Yeah, sure. So the overall goal, and obviously it's going to change as we get more information and more perspective, but I think right now, at this current present moment, the goal for us as an organization is to really just build a worldwide community for Black people, in spaces that we can exist in and just be ourselves. There's not a lot of spaces that we can literally just go into and have a great time and be ourselves to the fullest extent. As we all share, there's so many different parts and so many different experiences that us as Black people have. We don't all think the same. We all don't act the same. We all don't have the same experiences. And so our goal is just to bring that energy into a worldwide space wherever we're at. That's what we like to say, wherever we live at, wherever we are rooted in, that's what we're going to try to do. And so we do that in whatever the community needs in that particular time. Grocery giveaways, a youth empowerment program, hikes, fitness workouts, a scholarship fund. Like, we're just trying to find ways to, again, I think it's all rooted in that energy to define what freedom looks like to us. We can't let anybody else define that for us. And also we're not in the business of waiting for anybody. So we're going to try to take it, or we're not trying, we're taking it upon ourselves to be the change that we would like to see for our communities. And so that's really what we're trying to do in whatever way it looks like. I guess that's like the how or what to our why, but our why is to just build a worldwide community and safe space for our people. And then I want to obviously mention that, which should go without saying, but it's not that, because we focus on the Black community doesn't mean that we're not, willing to, collaborate or have conversations with people from other races, but we want to make it known, and it's important that our people is who we're looking at first. That's who we're trying to help. Because we tend to know that the help and assistance is not for us, like in America. Like you think about, and I don't want to get too off topic, but I think about this a lot, like the fact that these documents that we live by, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all these different documents, they weren't created with Black people in mind at all. We weren't included into any of that stuff. So like, how can we still, 3,000 or however many years when it was created, how that we expect to be able to like follow that in a lot of different ways, but it doesn't really apply to us. So like all those different things is things that we take into consideration when we're doing the work that we're doing, but we always want to operate in love and respect for ourselves and all other cultures and races and backgrounds. But that's what we're focusing on primarily.
Thank you. Kamani, thoughts about the Black neighborhood and what your hopes are for the organization?
Yes, thank you. Bryce pretty much said it all, but to add to it, we aim to be the bridge for people to connect in any type of area, atmosphere, environment that they want, whether that's, like Bryce said, through nourishment, through mental health, scholarship, education, advocacy. But we aim to be that bridge. We don't think that, we're going to change the world, kind of like the great Tupac Shakur said. He won't change the world, but he helps to kind of, I guess, I can't quote him verbatim, but he helps to impact the mind that will change the world. So we just want to do a step at a time, impact however many people we can. We're open, like Bryce said, we're inclusive to all, but we felt propelled to step into the leadership role. We felt that our communities, which we grew up in Richmond and Oakland and the Bay Area, which are heavily Black and heavily stricken by gun violence, poverty, mental health issues, drug abuse, etc. We felt propelled to actually step in and be proactive rather than reactive. So we were inspired to really just give back to our community and help out wherever we can. And there's no project too big for us. No project is too small. So we're just open arms.
Yeah, real quick before we go to the last question, real quick, I think this is important. I would just encourage, everybody on this panel to go visit theblackneighborhood.org, see obviously the great work that we're doing. And if you feel compelled, make a donation. And that's something that I think in nonprofit spaces that I'm learning more and more. I think that the general consensus is that we should just be operating with no money like this. A lot of this stuff should be just a passion project, but no, in order to sustain it, to continue to thrive and continue to help our community, we need funding. That's understated. We need that. And I think that we're getting to a point where we're being mindful of that. We're in year 6, and up until this point, we literally, probably in the first 5 years, we literally have operated with just off of our own finances and then obviously the community supporting us. And so I think that in order to continue to do the work that we're doing and take it to another level, the financial contributions are definitely necessary and needed. So I would just encourage everybody. I see they put the website in the chat. Thank you, Vanessa, for that. Check out our website and see the work that we're doing for yourself. And we've been doing it since 6 years. I've been since 2016. So we're not just talking, we're actually doing work. So check it out.
Having looked at it at the website, it does look like you are doing incredible work, and hearing you talk about it more today has been awesome. Thank you so much. Jumping to our last question, I'm wondering what support mechanisms do companies need to put in place to develop a company culture that is inclusive of and hears the voices of Black employees? Kimani, are there any thoughts that you have?
Yes, thank you. Definitely, I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll keep it brief. One, I think companies first have to recognize their biases that they have. And this can look like a plethora of things. I've been to a few places where they had de-biasing trainings, where they actually held these trainings and had people do some introspective searching to see what type of biases that they have and to try to control their inclinations to nominate candidates or hire people that are similar to them. So I think that's the first step. Second step is actually practicing inclusive leadership with hiring people of different backgrounds than the masses, hiring Black people to be on these boards of operations, boards of service, in these leadership positions. So then they have a variety of output from different backgrounds, because diversity makes us better. And then just hold the people in leadership accountable. such as having actually markers or deliverables that they must meet instead of just having something like a box to check. Where I've also seen a lot of companies where they just have a box to check. Okay, cool. We have 5 Black people in the network. Cool. We check that box. We're doing good. But I think a deeper introspective look will make a place more inclusive.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bryce, thoughts around what companies can do?
Yeah, I think Kimani pretty much, said it. I think the main thing is just being intentional about, hiring people in the upper level positions. Like it's great to just, be on a general staff, but we need people that's making decisions. We need people that's actually can give their insight and input when certain things, it could be something, and I'll just use TA, for example, since you guys are an advertising agency, it could be something as simple as doing a campaign. And if there's no like diversity, there's no Black people or, Black or brown people on the decision-making board, you guys can go and push a campaign that's maybe offensive to other races, but you guys don't think so. It's like, well, it's not offensive to us, or we're not even thinking about that. So to have somebody in a position that can say, you know what, here's why this is offensive, and I don't think we should move in that direction. That makes the world of a difference. Then you don't have to put something out and then have to apologize and do the whole campaign that a lot of people do, a lot of companies do when they make mistakes. You can prevent that, be very preventive and proactive in how you do it. And then I think just that all just ties into just wanting to just be in a position of learning. Like I've found in my experiences, there's a lot of times where, I may be called or somebody else may be called to provide a certain expertise. And instead of just listening and just kind of learning, people tend to want to like gauge or like shift the way that it should be presented. It's like, no, if you're calling me to do something, like listen to my advice and listen to my expertise is something obviously that I've studied extensively or I've been a part of. So just being open to listening. And it's okay to not know anything. It's okay to have a certain perspective and be ignorant to a certain way of thinking, and then to get new information and change that. I think a lot of people, just in general in the world, are not willing to challenge their own beliefs, and when they are challenged, they're not willing to change it. And so I think if a company kind of focuses on that, it's very important. Like this last week, myself and another founding member were invited to a event that a company had, and it was very insightful because this is a company that's white owned, and I would say white led, but they did have a lot of Black people in high positions and leadership positions, and because of that, that imprint, that blueprint and footprint was embedded into the culture of the company. And the event that they had was an extreme success because of taking direction from people of color in that position. So I can tell, we know, like, we may not say it or we may not articulate it in these different spaces, but we know when a company, a person, or organization doesn't have a good intention at heart, or they're just trying to do something to meet a quota. Like I know how it goes. And I don't, care to share all of that insight and stuff, but that's something that we pick up on. And so I think just being mindful of all those things will go a long way for any company. And you'll be better because of it, sure.
Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely. Having those different perspectives, especially at different levels within an organization, like you were saying, can make a huge impact on the work that we do and the results that come about. Thank you so much for all of your thoughts today. I know I've seen in the chat that Dave wanted to share a couple of thoughts. This is the owner of Thomas Arts, and he's joined us for our panel today, and I want to turn a couple of minutes over to him to share some of his thoughts based on our conversation. Dave, go ahead and take the stage. It looks like you might be on mute.
Okay, that better? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. First of all, I just wanted to thank everyone on this panel. I've been very moved by what has been said here today. And I'm very grateful to you all, everyone who's participated. I'm so impressed with how bravely and articulately you express things that are hard to talk about. And maybe they're not hard to talk about, but they need to be talked about, whether they're hard or not. Some of you know that I grew up in Ogden, and Ogden's a little different from the rest of Utah. It's an old railroad town that kind of grew up and had a significant Black population. So I grew up with a lot of Black folks, and that was my privilege, especially in the music world. There was a guy by the name of Cecil Smith who was 2 years older than me. He was a pianist that was just this fabulous pianist. He played for years around Utah and LA and other places. But he started to open up a world of jazz to me that was just unbelievable. Other musicians, other athletes, other scholars that were my friends back at Ogden High that probably had a 10% Black population, maybe 12 to 15% Hispanic, and an Asian population. So we were a little bit more diverse maybe than some of the rest of Utah. I look back and I saw the kids that were part of, all of that. And I look back on it now, and I know that they had nowhere near the opportunity that I had. Nowhere near. It was taken away from them. It was never offered to them. There was never a level playing field for those folks. And as I think back of my friends, I know that they had rough lives, and they had to really scramble for things they were doing. I'm thinking of one girl that was such a great debater, and she just never had a chance. And it kind of sickens me to think about that. I had chances, I had to work for them, but nothing near to what was taken away from my friends as I look in retrospect. And it's not right. It wasn't right. It's not right for us to think about that. And as being anywhere, normal. It's not normal. All those friends, to my knowledge, have all passed, and they've all passed early because they had tough lives. And it bothers me when I hear Anna tell a story about being pulled over when she's pregnant and thrown in jail for having obstructed vision, obstructed windshield. That sickens me. It's not right. It really is terrible. And I know that we need to do better, and that we need to, in some way, more than compensate for some of that. I feel really blessed for the blessings that I've had, and the opportunities I've had. And I know that others who are just as talented, just as smart, just as patriotic, if not more, have not had those. And I want to make sure that that stops now, that we start to view each other differently. I had the opportunity about 3 or 4 years ago to have a short but very meaningful conversation with a guy by the name of Guillermo del Toro. And you may have known him as an Oscar-winning Best Picture, Best Director, film director who happens to be from Mexico. And in that conversation, we were talking about inclusion and all these things. And he said something to me that was incredibly, it was just so insightful. It just kind of struck me. He said, we'll get there when we figure out that there is no them, only us. There is no they, only we. There is no them. There is no other. There's just us. And when we start to think of each other in that regard of not being different, not looking at any differences, that we're all on this planet together, and we're all human beings, and we're all, in the case of a lot of us, children of God, equal children of God, then that's how it gets better. There is no them, only us. There is no they, only we. And that's all I'd like to leave you with again, extreme thanks for what has been said here.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was a great way to round out our panel, and I appreciate your thoughts. I love that final thought of, there is no they, there's no them. It is we and us. Those pronouns are important. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Bear.
To finish off our panel, I want to say thank you to all of our panelists for taking the time to prepare your comments, to share your comments today. Your perspectives and your experiences have enlightened us all. Thank you to our audience who's been listening in. Oh, Bryce, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I want to just, so
Yes,
I don't know
please.
if you guys can see it, but the Q&A, there was a question that was proposed. I think it's a powerful question. I think we should, if we have time to like, answer it or unpack it, because it's a good one. So I'm sorry to interrupt, Nicole, but I just wanted to make sure that we, took some time to answer that or to look into the question.
Yeah, we did have one question that we did have to skip over, and we can go back and revisit that really quickly. Our final question was, what would you share as ways for TAers to learn more about and support the Black community? Anna, did you want to share any thoughts briefly?
Yes, I can. And Bryce, was that the question you were talking about in the chats?
No, I seen a different question in the Q&A.
Oh, sorry, apologies. In our Q&A, I don't think that I saw that.
You want to read it to us, Bryce?
Yeah, I can read it. This is anonymous. They said, when I asked a non-white friend of mine what I could do as a person of privilege, they responded that I should dedicate my life to dismantling white privilege. This is, I'm sorry. This is all or nothing approach that doesn't work for me, and I imagine many others. My question is, what is a single important thing that a white person can do on their own without getting help or resources from the Black community to make a real difference to Black lives in a world of white privilege? That's a powerful question. So I don't know if anybody wants to, and if you want to start with
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Bryce, for reading that. And that is an awesome question. And there's a couple of things I've been thinking about. My mind has been racing. And Dave, thanks for your comments as well. I think it's so important to remember too, in regards to the business as a whole and in regards to people of color and careers, that we don't need to just be hired to be hired. Remember that, keep that in mind. And if you need people of color to reach a certain level, give us educational opportunities, teach us, train us, allow us the opportunity to rise and reach our greatest potential. I think that's so important that we aren't told that we can't, or we're looked at the same as anybody else and given the same amount of treatment. Again, I think that there's so many people who, look at it now, that we have how many people working at TA in all the different departments, and we only have so many people on this call. That's what you can do. Tell people about this conversation that you had, because there's people out there and maybe they feel like they don't want to talk about it because they're not Black and they can't relate, or they think that we're just going to get on here and talk about all the problems Black people have. I'm sure people got on there and that just, I'm not feeling comfortable, I don't want to hear about it, or I want to just ignore it, just do my work at TA. But your work at TA is helping everybody to feel included. That is something that you can do in your own community, in your own little corner right now, is just whoever you're with, educate and have these conversations. It doesn't have to be on a global scale. You don't have to go and join a march, and you don't have to go and be in a parade or get a shirt that says Black Lives Matter, or carry a tote around that says Black Lives Matter. You don't have to do anything major, but have these conversations, become educated, and don't sit around and point fingers at everybody else and think that you don't have an issue, because that's when you do have an issue. The issue is when you can say, I don't need to have this conversation because I'm not racist. Yes, those are the people that need to have these conversations, are the people who are looking around and avoiding everything and saying they don't have an issue. Those are the people that have an issue. And that's how you can support the community the most. Have those conversations, go be a part of things, get to know your neighbor, whether they're Black, white, Mexican, whatever, get to know your people and become a unified people. Be educated and teach the rising generations too, your children, your nieces and nephews, whoever it is, to be kind, to be unified, and give opportunities to everyone, regardless of their background and experience. Thank
you so much. Were there other thoughts regarding this question from from our audience? I know Kule, you'd mentioned, it looks like Bryce and Kamani have both come off of mute. Bryce, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, and obviously powerful insight. So, when you're saying what's the single, I guess, important thing that a white person can do on their own, and I would say, I'm thinking about that acknowledgement and what that means, and I'll tell this story and I'll come back to it. So, I was one time playing basketball. I was in LA playing basketball at an open gym. I have been coming, a couple Saturdays that we all get together and just play basketball. So one of the guys that was playing, white guy, and after the session was over, I think he had seen me come a lot of different times wearing the Black Neighborhood shirt and just seeing that. And so after one of the sessions, he pulled me to the side and he was like, man, I forgot what he was telling a story. He was like wondering like what could he do? Kind of the same question that this attendee proposed, like what can he do to kind of like be a part of the change. And so he was telling me the story. He was saying how like, he has friends who may say racist and definitely use certain slurs and negativity, and he knows that's not right, but he doesn't say nothing. He didn't say anything. And so I don't know in the moment that he kind of caught me off guard with the question. Just I wasn't expecting him to ask that. But now thinking about it in hindsight, I was thinking in my head, well, you being silent is a part of the problem. Like you have to be able to be in a position where you can acknowledge and say certain stuff. And I get how things are said and what happens in different spaces. We all, if the world heard all of our conversation we have with our friends, we probably all would be in jail. I think that's just the reality of the matter. So I get it, but it's like acknowledging your privilege I think that goes a long way. And it doesn't have to be always something where you're vocalizing that to people. It's just more so you going through your day. Like think about, I just thought about this just now, and I don't know if this would even, how this would work, but think about as a white person, as a white man, or, white male or female, if you went throughout your day and literally mentally tracked all of the times in which your privilege got you certain things, or your privilege, like how you use your privilege in certain ways. Like just imagine if you were mindful of that, you were conscious of that. I'm not saying that necessarily the behavior would necessarily change, but you would be open, you would be conscious of it. And I think with anything in life, you start by awakening your consciousness, and then from there, once you have it to a certain level, you're able to make the real change. That's where the real change occurs. So I would just say, acknowledge the privilege, acknowledge that you benefit from it, and why you may not want to give that up. And I'm of the belief, I don't really think that'll ever change, at least in America, just based off of the history of America. But if you acknowledge it, I think you would be more compassionate and more empathetic and sympathetic to those who are not benefiting from it. And so I would just say, just acknowledge it, just acknowledge your privilege, and see what happens from there.
Thank you. Ariana, did you have a thought?
It's honestly really similar what to Bryce and Anna said, but it's really, with a lot of things, it all lies in the small things that no one really notices on the day-to-day basis, kind of like how we said, like just going about your normal day. You wouldn't think to look to the side for a cop, or you wouldn't think to look at anything. You just think about what's in front of you and what you're doing. But that is part of the problem, is you don't think about it because you don't have to. And even just like, I feel like even like for people who have kids, I clearly don't, but just thinking like you are allowed, you are able to think, okay, my son's or daughter's gonna go to school and he's gonna come back. For some people, they don't know, and that's what they worry about all day, every day. So I would definitely say it's just notice the smaller things in life, because that's definitely where the privilege lies, because we have to think about that every day, and most other people don't. And kind of like Anna said, the opportunities, it's even the small things, just like giving someone a book or telling them they can do it. Like just the small things, they go a long way in the long run.
Thank you. Kamani?
Yes, to piggyback on what the other people said. I think it's important. I think Anna spoke to this, but getting to know more Black people is a start, because I feel like bigotry stems from fear and unknown. And once you get to know people, you have a familiarity with these people, and that eliminates, hopefully, the bigotry, the prejudices, etc. But also, I think it starts at home. So teaching your kids about race, even if they go to an all-white school in an all-white neighborhood, it's still important for kids to know about the injustices that happen to other people, such as the Holocaust, such as slavery, etc. So they can kind of form their own opinions on injustices. But I think a big part of it is to not work in spaces that don't have diversity. So it's easy for a lot of people to just say, oh, well, I'm not racist, but I'm not really speaking up, or I work in a system that's racist, but I'm not racist. But that's kind of defeating the point, because you are adding to the fuel to the fire. Just because you don't say anything doesn't mean you're accomplice to that racist system. So like I said, I think a big part is to not work in these spaces and to demand, if you do work in these spaces, to demand that they hire more people of color. And support your money. Money is big. Yeah, give your money to Black companies. Juneteenth is a great time to patron Black companies, Black businesses, I would say.
Thank you. So many great thoughts. Contribute.
I say one thing.
Yes, please, Dave.
To all of that, because I agree 100%, and I want everyone to know that we want to hire more people of color, not because it's a quota, not because somebody says we have to. Nobody said that. Nobody has ever come after us for it. It's because, as we are in Washington, D.C., we're in New York, and we see what is going on in the country, and we see great companies. I have been of the belief for the last many years that we cannot achieve our full potential without more diversity. We just can't do it. We will never be the company that we can be without it. And we are anxious to do that. We have an initiative to actively pursue, because all of you who are with the company of color right now, you make us so much better. You make us so much better. We're not doing you a favor. You're doing us a favor by bringing your perspective to what we do. You are very important to TA, and we will not be the company we can be until we increase that to the level that it is, that it truly is ingrained within the company, and we have that diverse background and experiences that will propel us forward as people and as a company. And I want to make that really clear. I'm glad that everyone is with us. You make us better, and we need more, because we need more of this to be the company we can be. That's it.
Thank you. Kule, I know that you did want to share a thought.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone. And I think where this ended up, this conversation, it's actually preparing us for our next event for diversity and inclusion, which is going to be July 18th. It's Monday, July 18th. We're going to be hearing from a strong Black woman who lives in Utah, who's going to be sharing a speaking engagement that will be treated as a staff meeting. So what that means is, it's less optional. It's pretty much more. The 298-ish people, or people on the email list really should be attending. This is going to be on unconscious bias. And it's going to be exactly as what Anna said. I attended this speech and I was thinking, well, I know a few things. I'm a woman of color. I understand things, but to hear her share it and to hear her speak her truth in such a personal and courageous way was something that really impacted me and has changed how it is that I am sharing things. And these shared experiences that each of you have shared have uplifted and enriched all of us. And this is exactly what we want to have happening. And so I will encourage you all, and Kimani and Bryce, I would love to invite you to attend that remotely if you're able to. She'll hit the nail on the head. And if you feel your eyes are open, she'll open them wider, and she'll open your mind and your heart. So be prepared for that. Thank you to Dave. Thank you to Thomas Arts for giving us this opportunity to talk about this. And thank you again to the participants for helping us know more about Juneteenth and know more about the obvious issues, and what we can do to start educating ourselves and becoming more of that we instead of the they and them. Thank you. I'll turn it back to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much for everybody's final thoughts. And thank you, Bryce, for bringing our awareness to that question in the chat. I very much appreciate you bringing that up to our attention. I'm glad that we were able to address that comment.
No problem, no problem.
Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you to our audience. Kool-Aid has already given us one action that we can take as a TA company attending that next event. We've heard lots of different things that we can do to jump in, create more change, allow for more diversity, equality, and authenticity within our company and within our communities. I do want to let everyone know that we will send out the write-up about Juneteenth, so feel free to take a look at that, share it with coworkers who weren't able to attend, share it with family and friends. We'll also be sending out a survey. We highly encourage you to provide additional feedback there and let us know about your experience today as an audience member. And overall, thank you to everybody who's participated in some way today, and invite everyone to have a wonderful day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank you.
you.